Hey guys, it's Ross over at the Daily Jaws, back again with another exclusive interview. And I am buzzing for this one. This is someone I've been wanting to speak to for a long, long time. And this person is literally Jaws mad. We're also going to do a separate video where we're going to be talking about a mystery that may have been solved by this person after 50 years. Guys, please welcome Dan Carver, aka Jaws Mad 1975, to the show. Dan, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me, Ross.
Oh, mate, it's been an absolute pleasure. I've been really looking forward to this conversation. We've been trying to arrange this for such a long time now, and I'm really keen to obviously understand your Jaws journey and sort of dive deeper into the collection, if I'm honest, because I'm so jealous. As I said before we press record, this is my meager offering to you at the altar of Jaws collectors. Whereas I look in the background of your stuff, and you've basically got everything that I could, and probably most Jaws fans dream of. Um, Before we get to the collection, I'd love to know about your Jaws journey because obviously it's a movie that means a lot to both of us. Tell us about when you first saw the movie and how it affected you.
Yeah, well, I guess I was already fascinated with sharks when I was a kid. I had loads of shark books, and my parents have encouraged that. And then obviously there was the subject of when can he watch Jaws, I suppose. And my parents decided that around about 8 years old was probably the time they would yeah, be appreciated. So I watched it and was terrified. And yeah, was it instantly hooked, and that was it really. It just started a fascination with the movie, and then more to do with sharks as well, and it just sort of yeah, sort of steamrolled from there really.
It is one of those movies that hooks you. You know, you kind of grabbed. I mean, I remember when I first saw it as a kid, because I'm not quite sure how old you are, but I was sort of a child of the late 70s, early 80s. When I first watched Jaws, I'd been used to watching things like The Wizard of Oz and Superman and Star Wars. And then I watched Jaws, which is very, very different. You know, people have talked about it being, the first horror movie for kids. But for me, it was obviously a deeply affecting experience because here we are talking about it now. Um, how many times do you think you've seen Jaws?
I get asked that question quite a lot. I genuinely couldn't tell you, to be honest. It's been like a comfort movie for me, when I've sort of just come home late after work or been down the pub and just put it on. Sometimes fall asleep to it. It gets an outing probably 4 or 5 times a year. Usually Christmas it will get watched. So yeah, it's always on, and I've got a few copies of it. So I'm never short of a movie if someone needs to watch it.
That's the thing. Jaws is one of those movies as well that, it's available on almost every sort of kind of physical medium and also digital. And yet I think, the hardcore fans like you and I and many others sort of feel obligated to buy it every single time it comes out. I've actually got a copy of it on Laserdisc, the big, massive
Yeah,
Laserdisc. I don't own a Laserdisc player,
no, no,
but I'm
I
just
get
like,
you on that. I've got it on Super 8. I've got Betamax. I've got Laserdisc, and I don't have any of these mediums to play it on. So yeah, I totally
oh
get it.
man. What do you think it is about Jaws for you personally that makes you kind of really want to invest so much time and energy into not just building the collection but learning more about the movie? Because during for me personally, I think sort of the 80s was probably a golden era for movies, and particularly if you were a kid, because you got not just Jaws, but you've got things like Back to the Future coming out and Raiders of the Lost Ark and all those things. But Jaws always just seems to stand head and shoulders above sort of any other movie, or it seems to be you can trace back the success of those movies to Jaws, obviously being the summer blockbuster. What is it about Jaws that you think sort of just makes it me a bit more meaningful and makes it sort of just a little bit better or more impactful for you?
I think probably the characters. Certainly growing up, I was a kid of the 80s, so some of my favorite movies are still like Predator, Back to the Future, as you mentioned, and but Jaws was such, I suppose maybe a more serious movie. The dialogue was quite intense, and the character progressions and the way you sort of got invested in the characters as the movie went along. Didn't really get that from a lot of the other movies I was growing up watching. It was, they were great action movies, and you loved all the Arnie stuff and all that. But yeah, Jaws just for some reason captured sort of the young imagination, I guess, and you just felt like it was real.
Mm.
Everyone nowadays says, "Oh, it's a rubber shark." Well, we'd never seen anything like that, and the characters were so strong, and the delivery of the performances was absolutely epic. So it is a
Mm.
cinema masterpiece. So I think that's what probably just gives it, that capturing. sort of way of grabbing the audience and keeping people invested all these years later.
Yeah, honestly, that's exactly how so many of the other Jaws fans that I get to speak to sort of feel about the movie. You're drawn in by the characters and how the events are going to affect them, and ultimately, who's going to make it out of the story, and how will they be
Yeah.
changed. Um, in terms of sort of the movie itself, and you obviously mentioned characters, but do you have a favorite character or moment in the movie?
I think from a character point of view, Quint is just, the absolute pinnacle of a character. He's just got everything. And not to take anything away from the others, because everyone in that movie is just brilliant. But Quint just stands out slightly for me. And I think probably like the most awesome moment I think in Jaws is just after Brody goes in and says, "We're going to need a bigger boat," or "You're going to need a bigger
Mm,
boat." Um, you know, Quint just walks out of the wheelhouse and just stares off in the distance, and it cuts to the shark, and he's
mm,
just like that sort of cut off that engine. It's like boom, it's got his attention. Up until then, like Quint's pretty much like, yeah, whatever, we'll just go out and we'll catch this shark, it's all good. And then he sees it for
mm.
the first time, you just see that look on his face. It's like, ooh, we got a big fish.
Yeah, it's a really key moment in the movie, and for me, when I watched it, because obviously I've watched the movie a couple of times, to say the least.
Yeah,
But with that particular moment, when he, like you said, when he comes out of the wheelhouse and he stares out and he sees that shark coming towards him, again, so many different ways to interpret the performance, and it is a fantastic performance by Robert Shaw. But like you say, everyone in that movie, from an acting standpoint, is absolutely on their A game. But for me, in that expression, I read fear, and I read almost like a sense of, this is the shark that's come to get me. Do you know what I mean? It's like that sense of destiny.
yeah,
And on the Daily Jaws, for one of the blogs, we asked the question: was Quint actually destined to be killed by a shark, and was the shark from Jaws that manifestation of destiny? Because obviously Quint's gone through that horrific ordeal of being on the USS Indianapolis, which he talks about later on. Um, and it's clear that he's suffering some sort of PTSD, survivor's guilt, and probably many,
mm,
many other things that a lot of veterans around that time are probably feeling for various different reasons. But then the point that I've always thought about in terms of Quint was, well, he could have been anything after he came away from the Navy. He could have been a shoe salesman. He could have been this. He could have been that. But he went back out into the ocean, put himself directly in the firing line, if you want, and chose to
yeah,
be a shark hunter specifically. And for me, I think that there's just a moment of realization that this could be the shark that's come to get him, because he's always kind of felt that maybe he's feeling a little bit guilty about having lived. I'll never put on a life jacket again. He feels like,
yeah,
no, he should have perished with his friends. So just those tiny little moments, and you look at the movie like that, and you just think, there's so much more about it. And when I speak to my friends about it, I mean, don't get me wrong, a lot of my friends are a little bit younger than me, so they weren't caught up in the hysteria of it, and they weren't children of the 80s. But they watch it and they go, it's a story about a fish. And I'm like, no, no, no. It's not.
yeah,
It's not a story about a fish at all. There's so much more to this movie, which I think for me is why there's that longevity, and why it
yeah.
lasts. But what do you think gives Jaws its longevity? Because we're sitting here 50 years after it's come out. I mean, normally movies have sort of been and gone and forgotten about, but we're sitting here talking about a story about a fish 50 years
Yeah.
later.
Yeah, and that's a really good question, isn't it? What is that makes it so still relevant? I think a lot of movies nowadays rely on CGI, and they've lost the character building and the great deliveries by great actors. So much of it now is just all about the imagery. Whereas Jaws was, mostly about the characters because, as we know, Bruce didn't work all that well. But when you did see it, it wasn't overplayed, it wasn't overdone. One of my favorite scenes actually is when the shark comes and gets the guy in the boat. You know, just the silhouette of him coming underneath. That was really creepy. You just
Nightmare
couldn't
fuel.
about making it out, and it really is nightmare fuel. And I think that, yeah, all the little subtleties, the way that you only see little glimpses of him. The barrels are always there. The music, obviously, John Williams' score was just phenomenal.
Mm,
And yeah, that's what makes it a movie. Is all those little pieces. Obviously, Spielberg's a master, but
mm,
have we seen anything as good as Jaws? Bearing in mind he was what, 21 when he sort of made it. It was like, you
mm,
know, just a masterpiece from a guy that had a vision. And I think
yeah.
that's why it stands out. And something else I think actually, like when you go back and you watch movies from the 70s, they look old, they look dated. And I was thinking about this the other day. A lot of the times it's because the cars or the building or the fashion, everything looks 70s.
Mm,
But Jaws is nearly all entirely set at sea, and it doesn't age.
mm,
Those guys could be on that boat now, and it would still look fresh. There's not a great deal to make it look aged, and I think
mm.
that's why it sort of still stands out. It just sort of gives you the thought it could still be going.
I think that's a really good point because I remember watching the movie with a friend of mine who's actually she's quite knowledgeable about filmmaking and she's a cinephile like us. But she's quite a bit younger. I think she was probably 22, 23 when she watched it, and she'd never seen the movie ever before. And I was like, right, well, we need to change that. So we're going to sit down and watch this movie. And we watched it, and she really enjoyed it. She absolutely freaked out at the Ben Gardner head part. I actually got video. Whenever I watch Jaws with someone for the first time, I always video the person's reaction at that point because it's just
Yeah,
hilarious. Because every single person jumps. It's one of the great jump scares that never fails to work.
yeah.
But after the movie had finished, we talked about it, and one of her questions was, "When was it made?" And I said, "When do you think it was made?" And she was like, "Late 90s." And I'm like, "This was made in 1975." And she was like, "What?" I said, "Yeah, 1975." She goes, "So none of that was green screen?" And I'm like, "Nope, they didn't have green screen in the way that we use it today." And she couldn't believe it. So I started sort of going on some of the blogs and I started showing her just physically how they made this movie. And she was just like, they were mad. And that's incredible. But I think you're right, you really can't place when Jaws is made. And obviously, you've got the coroner reports that get and the posters and things like that give you sort of visual clues throughout the movie that it's basically set in 1974. But you could have made Jaws today and set it in 1974, and it might not have looked totally different. Obviously, technically, it would have improved a lot.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing as well that you said, Jaws is a character driven story. It's not about a shark. It's about the impact of the shark and how it tests the characters in their own unique ways. And as everybody knows, or a lot of people probably know, particularly in the Jaws community, that Shark from Jaws is only on screen for 4, maybe 4.5 minutes. Whereas if you look at today's blockbusters, it seems to kind of be the other way round, where the characters or the character driven stuff isn't on screen that much. And it seems to be about the spectacle, the special effects, the CGI, the
Mm.
explosions, the all that kind of stuff. And it actually has given me an idea just talking to you now. Like if we took, say, a modern day blockbuster, how does that balance compare to Jaws?
Mm.
Because there are some people who are working, say, on sort of a slightly lower budget, who actually do take a leaf out of the Jaws book. We recently did a blog about Longlegs, the Nicolas Cage serial killer movie, which I think is actually quite good. And they took a Jaws approach in the movie where it's like we don't show Nicolas Cage until we absolutely have to, just like the shark in Jaws. And that was a quote from one of the producers. So, the longevity of Jaws, I think, is there in the characters. That's what you go back to and you look at them in different ways and you see them being affected in different ways by the same problem. It's one of those movies, like you say, it's infinitely sort of rewatchable. So, how has Jaws changed your life?
Well, it's kind of shaped a lot of things in my life, to be honest. Um, it's led me to meet some fantastic people. I mean, the Jaws community is really, really strong. And I've got some great mates that I've met just through the love of Jaws. And although sometimes we've been in different countries, we've somehow managed to meet up, and it's brought a lot of friendships, and also a lot of memories. I've had birthdays where we've rented out a theatre, and me and all my mates have gone and watched Jaws. That's
Nice.
it's a great way. And also, like I'll get messages from people that I haven't spoke to for like 5, 10 years, just randomly because they've seen something Jaws related. Like I'll get a message, "Oh my God, saw this, thought you." Or I've even
Mm,
had people send me stuff in the post, like, "Oh, I saw this in a thrift store." So how cool is that? That you've got friends that instantly think of you when they see this movie. So yeah, it's certainly brought me and a lot of people very close together, and yeah, I'm very thankful for it in a way.
mm. Well, I agree with you. I think, the one of the big sort of things about the Daily Jaws, because it's been just over 9 years now since we started it. It's the people that you get to meet and the stories you get to hear and the connections. Like for me, I'm lucky enough because obviously we do quite a lot of interviews and we try to sort of champion the legacy of the movie. We get to speak to the filmmakers and the actors, the cast and the crew, all those guys. And some of them are in my mobile phone. And every now and again, I'll just get a random text message from someone that worked on Jaws, and I'll be like, this is so surreal. This is
Yeah.
beyond surreal. But you're right. It's about the people, very much like the movie itself. It's about the people of those connections, and whether the Daily Jaws last another 50, 100 years, whatever it is, those are the friendships that I'll cherish as a result of the work we've been doing. Now, Jaws is something of a, let you say, the all the right things going wrong when it comes to the production. Obviously, the shark didn't work, boats were sinking, but then that resulted in this amazing score by John Williams, which elevated the movie, and Spielberg credits of being 50% of the film, particularly when it came to the marketing and all that kind of stuff. And there are so many stories and trivia around Jaws. I mean, is there any particular piece of Jaws trivia or a Jaws story that still kind of blows your mind when you think about it?
Um, well, we know the shooting stars aren't real. Let's get that out there straight away.
Yeah.
See that come up quite a lot. Um, I just every day there's something about Jaws that sort of just makes you think. There's still questions being asked, and the people just come up with theories, and it just never ends, really. The movies just captures the imagination, doesn't it? And
Mm.
it must have been quite something to have been there when it was being filmed. They must have thought, what have we got ourselves into? Absolute
Oh,
chaos by the looks of it.
yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are so many stories. I remember when first met Joe Owls. This was back in, I think it was 2015. So yeah, met Joe Owls, production designer, and Carl Gottlieb, screenwriter, and this was over in Los Angeles. And they told a story that I had no idea about, which was where the scene where the shark is bashing the hull of the orca just after they finished singing. That was actually that those insert shots were filmed on Joel's driveway, apparently, where Spielberg was, I think, kicking a piece of wood that Joel's had made and running a hose pipe down it. And I'm just
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
this is like guerrilla filmmaking. Forget the $8 million budget and the hundreds of days of shooting. It's like you're kicking a piece of wood on a driveway,
yeah,
but it's so effective. It's just like so things like that. So for me, again, it's like those little nuggets that we find out about. And obviously, we could be talking about a separate topic about a 50-year-old Jaws mystery that I think you've actually solved, but that'll be in a separate video, and I'll put a link to that in the comments. Now here's a question that I don't get to ask very often, but you're not just a fan, you're a collector, you're a super fan, and you know the movie and the community very, very well. Um, do you think Jaws gets the recognition it deserves?
I think it's certainly had a great amount of recognition. I mean, it's gone down in history as being one of the great blockbusters. But I think maybe nowadays not so much. You know, a lot of still get a lot of people say, yeah, well, the shark didn't look real. In my opinion, I thought it was a rubbish movie. And sometimes I just stare at them and think, well, but everyone's entitled to their opinion.
Mm,
But I guess for Jaws fans, you can't really hear anything negative about it because it is a masterpiece in my opinion, and a lot of other people's opinion.
mm,
For all the reasons that we've discussed, be the music, the acting, just everything all pulled together to make
mm.
something that really was special. And I don't imagine we'll be sitting around in 50 years' time discussing some of the other movies like Sharknado, for instance. Yeah, which I did subject myself to and was like, wow. So yeah, I just think Jaws is going to stick around for good. And yeah, I'll still be collecting when I'm old and grey, I reckon.
But it's wonderful that you actually mentioned Sharknado because that brings me nicely to my next question. What do you think of the Jaws sequels, and what do you think of the state of sort of the recent spate of shark movies that have seemed to have made a resurgence over the last 15 years or so?
Yeah, not a fan of the sequels. I won't lie. A lot of people sort of stare at me and think I'm crazy when I say that I don't particularly like Jaws 2. Even though it's got Scheider in it, but I think Jaws 2 was quite a good visualization of how if you don't have the right director, you can have the same people and you just don't get the same result.
Mm.
Um, Jaws 2, it's not bad as a standalone movie, but as a sequel, yeah, not great. 3 and 4, wow. What to say? I showed my other half Jaws: The Revenge recently, and yeah, I don't think she could quite believe what she was watching, to be honest. So you won't find a great deal of Jaws sequel memorabilia in my collection. It's all the first movie. So and I'm quite happy with that, I think.
Right, that's fair enough. I'm kind of in the same sort of thoughts and feelings about the sequels, but I can enjoy them because I remember watching Jaws 3 on TV, and I thought, wow, this is really cool. Jaws in SeaWorld in 3D. And I'm like, okay, this is really cool. But then when you think about it, Jaws is a quite an unrefreshable idea. Like,
Yeah,
again, it's kind of like, it is a story that becomes full circle. But I think there are two things that I really like about Jaws 2, and that we've done a series of interviews for the 45th anniversary, which was last year. which was, and to your point about director, originally obviously it was going to be a much grittier, darker vision with John D. Hancock on board, and obviously that didn't work out. So they brought on Jeannot Chouark, who had a week to prep, which is
Yeah,
incredible. And it's just like, okay, so it's amazing that the movie kind of was actually as good as it came out given the circumstances. And I think there are two things for me that kind of stand out from that, because you're right about the right director, or at least a director having the time to to put their vision properly together. But I think there are two things that stand out for me. I think Roy Scheider is arguably better in Jaws 2 than Jaws, even though I don't think the script and his dialogue was as good. He played the trauma PTSD side of things very, very, very well. He kind of trying to keep it underneath the surface, but when it bubbled up, it was like, oh my god, Brody's going down the same road as maybe Quint, and maybe he's really struggling.
yeah,
And the other thing as well is John Williams' score. I think
yeah,
John Williams' score is arguably better than Jaws, even though Jaws was absolutely iconic. And that theme is just, you can't possibly replace it, but the work and the intricacy of it all. And I think the fact as well that I think John Williams was working without a finished script or finished movie at that point, it's like that's even more impressive. So for me, I think those are probably the two things that we could take away from Jaws 2, that even if
yeah.
all the major pieces aren't falling into place, you can still do some good work. And then obviously Jaws the Revenge. Oh man, honestly, I think I actually heard someone describe it as the best comedy of 1987. It's absolutely brilliant. It's absolutely fantastic, and I just love it for what it is. It is what it is. It's it's trying to just try and keep an idea going for the fourth time in an
Yeah,
incredible way. And the crew basically, well, the director more specifically, Joseph Sargent, took advantage of the situation and set his movie in the sunniest, most tropical place he could find because he fancied a holiday. And it's like,
absolutely.
good man, good on him. So,
Why
but
not?
why
The thing
exactly?
is, like, with the revenge, there's actually some really, really good bits in it. I mean, when he's down in this little submersible and the shark comes alongside and looks at him, really, really good movie moments. And like, hey, we got a big fish down here. Oh yeah, how big? And he comes out. Really
Yeah,
good. Like, some of it's good, especially the shark in the shipwreck when it's chasing him. That's actually very well done.
one of
But
one of my
you know,
favorite shots in the Jaws franchise is when the shark breaks through that wall and Mike Brody's got the air tank in Jaws Revenge and he goes shooting up. I'm like,
yeah,
that's actually a really cool set piece. So you're right, there is some good stuff there, but I think the first 30 minutes or so when it's on Amity Island and it's very family orientated and Lorraine Gary's back and Lance Guest, who's actually very, very good in the film,
yeah,
they really try to create something, and take you back to Amity and the Brodies and get back to that theme,
yeah.
those themes of family and home. And then it kind of just takes a left turn at the traffic lights and goes off the cliff. And it's just mental. And I'm just like,
It,
this is
very,
great.
very bizarre. Very bizarre the direction they took it, but you've got to admire him. He got his holiday and he got Michael Caine as well. So
He, yeah, he did. Well, apparently Michael Caine read the first line of the script because originally it was set in Hawaii, and it's just like I think the first line of the original screenplay said something along the lines of, "The sun is rising over the Hawaiian horizon" or something like that. And he's like, "Yeah, wicked, I'll do that because Roger Moore and Sean Connery don't live too far away, and we can play some golf." So I'm in. That was
I don't
basically it.
know.
And it's just like, I mean, one thing I want to do, I really want to do an interview with Michael Caine about Jaws the Revenge, but I don't think he'd ever be up for that ever.
Don't think
So
so.
yeah, but that would be a great conversation. What do you think about sort of the recent spate of shark movies that have been getting made? Because they seem to be getting a resurgence, particularly sort of on the streaming services, and they seem to be sort of falling into two camps where you've got the serious attempts at a thriller, and then you've just got the absolute crazy ones like Sharknado, as we mentioned before, and Sharktopus versus Megabot, and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
What do you make of that?
Um, you know, I watched a few. Um, Deep Blue Sea was not bad. I didn't think it was a great movie, but it was quite nice. I always love a little nod to Jaws. The license plate at the beginning, little things
Mm.
like that. The Meg, I thought was a lot of good Jaws nods in it. But as movies go, I'm not a big fan of a lot of the newer ones. So one or two have probably stood out as being good, but I've actually stopped watching them now, to be honest with you, because I do sometimes come off up and just think, yeah, it just wasn't Jaws. I don't watch Jaws now. you know. But yeah, I haven't seen anything. I mean, has anything stood out for you? I haven't seen the one under Paris. I don't know if that's worth a
Um,
watch.
there's a few. Yeah, Under Paris is quite good. What you do with it that hasn't
Yeah,
already kind of been done, that you either pushes plausibility and realism out the window, so you have a roller coaster, or you try to keep it realistic and grounded, but then also exciting at the same time. And I think the problem with shark movies, or the biggest challenge for shark movies, is that, like you said, it's not Jaws. So it's like, where do you kind of go with it? I mean, for me, I think the two that probably stand out are Deep Blue Sea, but that's more for the practical effects. I think that the practical stuff in that is some of the best practical effects, bar none, that I've ever seen, and it was incredible to see that evolution from Bruce to those
Yeah.
Makos. You know, it's just like, wow, how did that happen? And we're actually trying to get an interview with the maker of those so we can understand
Cool.
how that has kind of happened. Because for me, from a technical point of view, Jaws obviously set a different kind of bar, just filming on the ocean and also having a
Yeah.
live working prop in the ocean as well. Regardless of how much trouble it made, it really pushed the technical side of filmmaking at the time. But the other one that I really like is The Shallows. I
Yeah.
really rate that. I think it was really clever just to boil the action down to just minimal amount of characters, so
Mm.
basically one, and a very plausible situation where they go surfing in a bay, a shark happens to be in the bay, and they get cut off from land, and they've
Yeah.
got very little parts of actual bits of rock or whatever it is, and I think it's a buoy of some sort. That basically that's all they've really got in order to survive. Otherwise, they're dead meat. But beyond that, I think the way it was constructed and made was good. I think the shark is great in it. It's a mixture of
Yeah.
practical and CGI, which is great to see. Um, and I think it was also just they didn't try to do too much with it. They knew what their remit was. They weren't trying to be too innovative or too extravagant, or because you just kind of see these movies that are lasting sometimes like 1 hour 45, 2 hours, and it's just like this could have been half an hour shorter. And I think The Shallows is maybe 1 hour 35, if memory serves me right, if that. So for me, it's a get in, get out, job well done kind of movie, which is kind of what
Yeah.
what you want. The greatest shark movie's already been made. You can't top it. So why try to? And I think they did a pretty good job.
Yeah. I
Um,
agree. So,
cool.
yeah, I watched that one, and I did generally think that was one of the better ones. Yeah, I enjoyed
Mm,
that one immensely.
yeah. I've got to ask you about this because obviously we're coming to the end of the Jaws journey section. But what do your friends and family think about your Jaws obsession? Because you're one of few people that have gone to the painstaking lengths that they have to create, effectively a Jaws museum in their own home.
Yeah, and yeah, I think my parents were pretty supportive of it. Initially, think they thought I was a bit odd, but at least he's not out stealing cars or something. Um, but yeah, I think it was only when I started getting Jaws tattoos that my mum started raising an eyebrow and was like, "Yeah, are you all right?" But she's grown to like them, I think. So, but yeah, most of my friends and family, they just think it's cool. When my friends come around and have a look. They all want to see the Jaws room, so they're welcome.
Nice.
They seem to
Tell
support me.
tell us about the Jaws tattoos. When did you get your first one?
Well, I got the first one. It was part of a sleeve that I'm having done, and
Mhm.
basically the first one was Quint, and then
Nice.
it became a sleeve, and
Mhm.
yeah, managed to get most of the rest of the guys on there. It's been a 2 year process, and I'm going back in August to the UK to get the last little bit done, and then it will be the arm will be complete. So um, can't put this one on a wall though or in a frame, so
Yeah, but
to
you
take
can
it with
carry it
me.
around with you. So when we do Jaws 100, so when we talk about Jaws for the 100th anniversary, when I'll be 95, which is going to happen. So you'll be covered in tattoos by then, and you'll have what, like the Jaws logo across the forehead. Is that kind of the goal? Is that where you're going with this?
No, to be honest, the Jaws sleeve was never supposed to be a sleeve. It was supposed to be just t-shirt length, so that it wouldn't be on display all the time. But my tattoo artist practically begged me to give him more skin to do the full job. So it will only be this arm, and it's not going any further than that.
Okay. We'll check in on you in a couple of years and just see if you've managed to stick to that.
So, like Post Malone, I'd be like, quit on yours.
Yeah, get me a bigger boat.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever. Oh, that's funny. So as we said, the 50th anniversary is coming up. It's next year. I mean, it's sort of
Yeah.
seven and a bit months away.
Yeah.
How are you feeling about the 50th anniversary of Jaws, and what are you hoping to see for sort of celebration and event wise?
Well, I mean, the plan was, and it has been for years, to go to Martha's Vineyard for the 50th. Um, and a group of friends, we were talking about all going and just going and making it a great adventure, whether or not they do something on Martha's Vineyard or not, because I know there's some back and forth about what's happening with the Chamber of Commerce and whatnot. But I don't think financially I'll be able to get there, so I'll be watching from afar. But I'd like to see them celebrate it. Jaws Fest was always absolutely fantastic and something that I wished I could have got to. The
Mm.
pictures and the videos that came out of that
Yeah.
was amazing. And I get it, like they probably don't see it as a big deal. The rest of the Jaws world are like, come on, this is like, Graceland. Get
Yeah.
everyone together and let's do it. I hope they do something. I hope it's good. I'd love to be there, but yeah, I hope that the Jaws fans get what they deserve out of the 50th. And Universal have done some absolutely great jobs of releasing some really, really cool stuff over the years. The 30th
Mm.
anniversary was probably one of my favorite releases of the DVD box set. I thought that
Yeah.
I
I
still
love
think that
that.
is probably the best that's come
Yeah.
out. So I hope for the 50th we get something good. I mean, I've seen they're chucking stuff out at the moment. It's gone Jaws mad out there in the in the collecting world. It's too big for me to keep up. I can't afford to buy all the stuff that's coming out now, but I'll get select bits. But some of the releases have been fantastic. So for the
Mm.
50th, I hope they deliver on something really big for
Uh,
us.
Amen to that. Yeah, I really hope so. As I say, we have conversations going on with the Chamber of Commerce, and we're just trying to stay close. But they have, challenges over there, and logistically, it's like, what can they? Was it more people down there than they can handle? I guess it's kind of that kind of scenario. Do
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So I think they're just trying to. They definitely want to do something, and certain things are in the pipeline. But yeah, I'm excited to see what happens, and hopefully the Daily Jaws can play some kind of role in that. And if there's an opportunity for you to be there or help out, we'll definitely let you know, because we want the best, most passionate Jaws fans
thank
to
you
try
very
and make
much.
something special happen. Now, here is the question that I said I wasn't going to tell you beforehand. And it is, I love hearing these questions, because hearing the answers to this, because the answers are always different. The subject of reboots, remakes, sequels, prequels, and everything in between always comes up. If you were to remake Jaws, how would you cast it, and all this kind of stuff. My question is simple. You are the head of Universal. You are put in charge of making a new Jaws movie. What is your 60-second Jaws movie pitch?
Don't do it.
Oh, you're the first person that's ever said that. Wow, you didn't take the bait. So you are completely against remake, prequel, sequel, all that kind of stuff.
Uh, I wouldn't be against a prequel. I think a prequel is probably the one thing the franchise does need. Um, you know, as for a remake of Jaws, I'm not going with that. You can't mess with perfection.
Mm.
And we've seen what's happened with sequels. So I think a prequel would be really good. And I know there's a few ideas floating around out there
Mm.
that I support. And I think, yeah, there's definitely an opportunity there. And I think, as the head of Universal with the 50th anniversary coming up, why wouldn't you? I mean, you know, they've made plenty of remakes and prequels of other franchises and made millions. So,
Mm-hmm.
the Jaws fraternity would probably take a prequel, but I'm not sure how welcome a remake would be, in my
Mm.
opinion. Very humble opinion as well.
Nice. Okay. I like it. I like it. Well, before I sign off, it's customary for me to leave the final words for the guests. So, do you have any words of wisdom or jawsdom for the fans out there?
Keep loving the movie and yeah, keep just sharing all your collections as well. I love seeing what other people have got.
And where can people follow you, Dan? Where can they find you?
You can get me on Instagram, JawsMad 1975. Also on various other platforms, YouTube. I've got a Jaws Mad YouTube channel, and yeah, pretty much anywhere on any platform you'll find me somewhere.
Fantastic. Well, they can now find you on the Daily Jaws, because we're going to be posting these interviews up on our website and on our YouTube channel, and on social media as well. So, guys, I've been Ross for the Daily Jaws with Dan Carver, aka Jaws Mad 1975. As always, I hope you've had a wonderful time. It's been a fantastic conversation. I've really enjoyed it. And I'll drink to your legs, and I'll bid you a fond farewell and adieu.